All right, we are here live with Alex MacDougall. Alex, what's going on, man? It's been a while.
Yeah, it has been a while. It's going good.
Uh,
Spring's starting.
yeah, first of all, congratulations on I think the highest. I don't know for sure because I'm not a stats person, but the highest Canadian showing at LVO, I think ever, possibly
I think that's the
fourth
case.
place. You finished
I
fourth
think we
overall.
I think we'd know if somebody made finals.
Yeah.
If it was a Canadian.
So I brought Alex on. Obviously, me and Alex used to do a show together. But we've both been kind of super busy, and I've been super busy and not really motivated to be honest, and not really even playing 40k. But I thought it'd be great to chat with him about his experience at LVO, and just kind of talk to him about state of the game and those kinds of things. So I guess Alex, first of all, like how are you doing, and what's going on with you?
It's going great. Obviously the 40k side of things. This is like the biggest success I've ever had. Life in general, yeah, it's been pretty chill. Still doing lots of work, crazy hours and stuff, but my spare time is still mostly to 40k, so been enjoying it.
Awesome. Okay, so I guess first question for you. I think a lot of people and gladly, like, I've always known you've been like one of the better players in Canada, or at least the West Coast for sure. I think a lot of players, people, especially in like, you're obviously part of Art of War, so people know you through that. But I would say in general, you are a bit of a unknown in the grander 40k because of the fact that, and this is the I think the most impressive thing about your run in the LVO, which was you played like basically one and a half events. Like I'm not even gonna really count the like 30-person like event, not that you didn't win it, but it was like basically Garage Hammer. It was like a Garage Hammer GT we threw together.
Yeah.
That was a No Tac X, and then I think you won one other event this year. So what did you how did you feel going into LVO, knowing how little like tournament practice you've had? And I'm curious to hear about the other kinds of practice you replaced it with, but going into the event with how little practice you had, how did that feel?
It definitely felt really weird. I didn't know what level of rust I had. Like that's how little I was playing, is I didn't even know. I didn't have a feel for how I was playing compared to other players. Like I
Right.
don't know, like you look at the Art of Warhouse and they play each other all the time, so they're getting excellent practice there. And then they were like all going to big events and I just had nothing. I had like some TTS
Yeah.
every now and again, which doesn't really do the same thing. And I just yeah, it was really strange and I just hoped for that like round 1 to start knocking the rust off, and I got a pretty nice like like ramp up of skill as the
Yeah.
event went along.
Yeah, some of the guys had some pretty like horrific well
Day ones.
some pretty horrific ones. What would you say like your first really challenging game was as far as LVO? Was it Manny?
Game 3 was actually pretty tough too. I went up against like pretty meta custodies, and that was a 10-point game. But after that, it was probably Manny.
Yeah.
My game, Matt Geyer, round 5 against Admech, that was pretty tough too. The other ones weren't too bad. And then yeah, Manny obviously was like super hard.
Now, you've been piloting this kind of mixed Force of the Highblind list for quite some time, even before the new Gene Stealer book came out. When the new book came out, do you feel like overall the addition, because I think a lot of people aren't really sure like where Gene Stealer cults fit in the kind of hive mind meta right now. So, do you feel like you were pretty happy with the changes to Gene Stealer cults when the new book came out, or do you feel like that kind of part of your list got weaker?
Oh no, definitely stronger. It was able to do kind of all the old stuff that it used to do, but without any CP being
Right.
put into it. It could just kind of exist on its own. So then you could just supercharge the Hive Guard every turn. Um, no, overall it got a lot stronger. The GSC book is kind of a weird mixed bag on like total power level. Like I don't think it's just going to be like tabling people, but it can play the missions super hard. And the combat portion of it, okay, I think the best way to describe it is that you can't really do just one thing with a GAC book. You start like running out of resources to like go just combat or just shooting. So when I was able to do like just combat from high or from Gene Stealer Cult and then put all of the shooting onto the Tyranid portion, it was kind of like the perfect mix.
And
Like they complemented each other really well.
And then speaking of your list, like, was this a list that, like, I know you've been playing a kind of similar list, and I know, like, for the last little while.
Mhm.
Was there a lot of changes in the list leading up to LVO, or were you playing this kind of list pretty set even going into Custodes, knowing that Custodes was going to be there, and like obviously Jakari, there's like the Thick City list with Jakari and whatever these ridiculous names are. But did you make any like specific changes to the list to kind of address the current big meta guys, or did you feel like this list as it is has been successful for you for a lot of the season, or your season, I guess, whatever that looks like, and you were like pretty confident in the list regardless of who you went against?
Definitely playing the same archetype of list, I think is the best way to put it, for like 18 months now was huge. Just that refinement of playing the same list again and again. Because really it was like, oh, we don't need Swarmlord anymore because the Pierce Drain Gene Stealers get a pregame move and just hit way harder. It was kind of just like rely on the repetition of the same list, and then everything that was in the list before that got swapped out just got a little bit better. Like the Pierce Drains go to strength 5 in Twisted Helix, and they move a little bit faster, and they've got more attacks, and they're a little more durable, and all these things just kind of piled up where, it just functions so smoothly together.
Yeah, and yeah, tell me about that. Like that change right there, because I know I think when we played, you had the Swarmlord in your last time we played. You had the Swarmlord in your mix and last few lists.
Yeah.
So what was Swarmlord's obviously always been a big staple in a lot of Tyranid lists for the longest time. So what was your I guess thought process to take that out of the list?
I mean, Swarmlord himself isn't spectacularly good as far as like points per damage output. Like he's obviously a good combat character, and he's kind of well rounded, but he is 240 points. Like he's like Morgan Vol is way better than he is.
Yeah.
In combat.
Wait, is she 240 points?
Yeah.
Oh my
yeah,
God.
she's the exact same. She's just way better, but she doesn't have a double move.
Right.
And obviously we were looking for the double move. But then you go to Twisted Helix or just Gene Stealer Cult in general, and you can purchase an upgrade that gives you a pregame move. So turn 1, you could throw Twisted Helix Gene Stealers 24 inches anyway, which is like just as fast as the non-Kraken Stealers were going with Swarmlord.
Right.
So yeah, sure, I'll buy a 15-point upgrade for a squad rather than 240 points for Swarmlord.
Yeah.
And I'll find another 240 points worth of stuff that's way better in combat than he is. So it was just a net gain.
And do you think moving forward, obviously the Tyranid book has been announced. I have a feeling, and this is just my theory, I haven't actually read the book, but it seems to me that the game devs have started to move away from things like double shoot, double move, like those kinds of like those types of mechanics for the most part. It seems to me like, I know from what I'm hearing, Eldar's lost Quicken. Obviously a lot of factions have lost their double shoot, double moves. So I'd imagine Hiveguard probably finally get like their comeuppance, so to speak, because I think a lot of people have been like it's been like such a crutch part of the book for so long. Do you feel like do you have any, I guess, like predictions for the new book, or any kind of like things you'd like to see as far as changes so that other parts of the book become a bit more I guess relevant? Because I guess one thing that I've noticed is with this Crusher Stampede, people like their monsters, and it feels like they finally have an excuse to play them. So I'm wondering kind of like what are some things that you'd love to be able to do in the new book when it comes out?
So I'm sure that all of those double fight, double shoot, double move is gone. If I'm really lucky, they'll keep Overrun around, because I love Overrun, and it's a lot more balanced than it used to be. Because you could like charge everything, Overrun, and then continue to fight again into more stuff with no fight twice, and with the fact that you can only fight what you declared as a charge. Right. Overrun is just kind of like a cool little secondary move afterwards.
More of an escape than it is like a damage multiplier.
An escape or like a move block.
Yeah.
That's fine for a CP. I mean, we've started to see some of the data sheets. Like people have been posting them from like purchasing a new box.
Yeah,
and
I saw that.
Data sheet is in the box. So if you look at the data sheets, the monster data sheets are like nuts now. Swarmlord has 9 attacks.
Jesus. Is he?
Yeah, and he's strength 9. Like 9 attacks, flat 3 damage, AP -4.
Yeah.
Like he just hits like a truck in combat now, and he's 13 wounds and a 2+4+.
Right.
Like,
I was gonna say, I'm sure he loses that 3++, because that 3++ in combat was like, I think 3++ in general, even though I'm a big advocate of them for my Magnus, they are pretty grotesque when it comes to like really strong combat characters.
Yeah, No, I'm sure that's gone. He's got a 2+ save instead, and he's toughness 8, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And then they've done the same thing with everything. Like the Exocrine is 15 wounds, T8, 2+ armor save, and his gun hits way harder now. So if the data sheets are good, they don't need the broken strats anymore, because that's
Mm.
really how the turn or the 8th edition codex was even surviving. It was just like, yeah, all your data sheets are ass, but you get to do everything twice. So if you can fund them the CP, you can kind of keep up with everyone. Or if you have a data sheet that isn't bad, like the Hive Guard,
Yeah.
and put all the broken stuff onto it, then it gets really overpowered.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like I always feel like there's a really important balance that needs to get struck between like data sheets and stratagems. Like sometimes you have books where the strength is in the data sheets and sometimes the strength is in the stratagems. And I feel like sometimes they miss that mark on one side. And so you end up with, certain armies that can't even function without the stratagems or CP, or they really break down. And then you have other armies where like they basically don't even use CP. It's just the units are just that good on their own. So I'm
Yeah.
hoping we see, because I'll be honest, I've never been a huge Tyranid fan. I've not because I didn't like I just never liked the models. They always felt a little bit like, I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of like super organic stuff like that. But yeah, I'm interested to see kind of where they go. Do you think it doesn't look like they're going to get a big model release, like maybe one or a character or two? Just it seems like every book is getting a character or two.
I've seen all sorts of people show like, oh, this is what's coming, and I don't believe any of it. We
Yeah,
know one model is coming because that was one of the leak, or the not the leak. That was right from Warhammer Community. It was the rumor engine.
yeah,
It was very obvious. It's got those little like the bladed talon with like
yeah,
the little
exactly.
like, repeating holes down the side. That's clearly a Tyranid model. There might be some other revamps. I don't really care. I like most of the range, so I'm not. Just give me viable rules, please.
Yeah. So just heading back to LVO, like I know you had a pretty, a lot of people have been talking about it, your game with Manny. Obviously, Manny was coming in with this like outrageous Dark Eldar list that like everyone was
Yeah.
basically crying about, and it's something that I actually find really funny. And I don't know if it's like a North American thing, but like Manny obviously is like, if Manny was like lived in the States, I think people would have been like super super down with what he does. But I think because he generally runs these like super crazy SKU lists, and he's from the UK, people in America like he's like public enemy number one. Like he's basically like, he's really easy to, it's really easy to like turn him into a villain. Um, and Manny's obviously a really good player. So when you drew him, what were your first thoughts like against that list? Like, were knowing that like how outrageous it was, like were you worried at all, or did you feel like you had the tools you needed to take care of it?
I absolutely had the tools to deal with that. Like the Devour Gaunts were the number one thing in the game to bring that army down. Um, I was kind of happy about it. I was like, if I lose to it, like, darn. But if I win, like, I am the people's champion.
Yeah,
Like, let's get that
that's what I'm saying.
spammy.
Like it's like he's a villain, right? He's like a super
Yeah,
villain. Like
absolutely. It was. I wanted to be the one to do it.
yeah,
I wanted to be the one to do it, and then I wanted to. I didn't remember to say it, but I wanted to like go to Siegler and be like, "Hey, I want my cut of your 5,000 because I ensured that you're gonna win the ITC now because I got Manny out."
yeah,
Um, it was a good game. It's this the it's stressful. It was a shadow round. Went till midnight. It was a slog too because I had to kill. There was just so much dice being rolled. Um, but yeah, I mean, by the end of turn 3, I had killed 150 of his 171 racks, and I was like, okay, I got this.
and he's
It's fine.
still. I mean, I know there's some like weird things happening in that game from the replays, like some like rules weren't quite played correctly, and you guys had to do a little bit of like reneging. What is I've met Manny a few times, and I guess I'm curious, and I'm sure a lot of people are curious, but like, what's it like playing him? Because I think personally, and this is just my opinion, from he seems to get a bit of a bad rap for being like a bit of a intense. I don't know if he's like how you describe him, but he's always been super like jovial and friendly to me. So like, what was it like playing him specifically? Like, was he a person to play? Like, was there any, especially like on that fourth game shadow round? Like, you guys were both tired. Like, where were you mentally in that game?
Um, I mean, I probably can't even speak much to it. I probably got best behavior Manny. There was two judges watching us the entire time.
Hmm.
Like nothing was going to happen. And again, I don't know if that's what would have happened anyway. But yeah, we were being watched. He was very intense, which I would expect for somebody in the shadow round. I don't expect anything different at that point. We're both tired. Um, I think the game went just fine. I
Yeah.
had one issue, which was I went to shoot Drazar, and Drazar was like 5 inches away from anything else, and he was just like, "Oh, well, I mean, I could have been here." I was like, "But you aren't." So I let him do the take back, because the Hive Guard would have just scooped him.
Yeah.
But I was like, whatever. I don't actually want to win that way anyway.
Yeah.
It was definitely a clear mistake on his part. But then I'm thinking, like, yeah, no, it's fucking 11:30. Like, fine, let's just go for it. So there's a little bit of contention there. But I mean, we talked through it in like 10 seconds. It wasn't
Yeah.
a big deal.
Now, I've played 4 games before in a day, like at Adepticon. It's 4 days a game. Obviously, the fourth game on the first day is only the fourth game total. And on the second day, it's your eighth game in 2 days. So
Yeah.
I've been there where you're like playing in those high pressure games and it's really tiring. What's it like playing that seventh game in 2 days, basically late at night, knowing for so much to go into that top eight, right? Like, how's your like mentally, like where were you there? Like, did you do anything kind of knowing that you're going to that shadow round to kind of get yourself mentally prepared, or did you just kind of treat it like any other game?
Um, from a physical standpoint, I went and got a big bottle of water and down that. And then shout out to you know him, Mr. Buns, Mike Buns. I was like, dude, I need some food. Can you go grab something for me? And he went to Chick-fil-A and got me a salad.
Nice.
And I plowed through that salad, and that fueled me through. But from a mental standpoint, I was already at a state where I was super happy. I was like, holy shit, I went 6-0. Like, I'm off. I wanted to make top eight because I wanted to be that Canadian in top eight. But I was like, I kind of already achieved the goals. Tyler Bortel had gone 5-1, so I was guaranteed to win Forces of the Hive Mind. So like the goals I had set out going to LVO were done, and everything after that was gravy. But yeah, I mean, I'm still a competitor. I still want to win. Like that's
Yeah.
not going to change regardless of how far I get. I was super happy I made it to semifinals, and also disappointed I lost in the semifinals.
Yeah,
still
so I
wanted
was going to ask you about
anywhere.
before we get into the semifinal game. I want to ask you about your quarterfinal game because I was watching the stream, and you were against Crusher Stampede, I believe. I forget the name of the opponent. I should probably do my research.
David Gaylord.
Yeah, and watching the game and look, I think one of my criticisms, and I think a lot of people criticisms of the streaming commentary, so to speak, was that like it seemed like as good as the like coverage was, Peter and Adam didn't really know what was going on in the tables. Like they really had to rely on like the table bosses to like communicate it to them. And so they were a lot of times guessing or at least like speculating as to like what was happening. And obviously the players are not mic'd either. So as an audience member, almost unanimously watching that game, the commentators thought you were like the first turn you pick up the Karen, and everyone was like, okay, that's good. But then like I remember them kept popping back to your game, and they were like, oh, this isn't looking good for Alex. Like these harpies are flying everywhere. The hive tyrant has tagged your hive guard. Like the commentary was unanimously like you're losing the game. And a lot of people in chat were like, it doesn't look good for Alex. And there's actually a point, and I don't know if you've gone back and watched the coverage. There's actually a point where they basically were like, this game's over. They switch over to the other game. And we're watching the game between Siegler and I think he was playing. I can't remember.
Vanilla, right?
Huh?
I think it was Anthony Vanilla.
Yeah, Anthony Vanilla. And they switched out for like 30 minutes or 20 minutes, and then like they switched back, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, Alex has won by like 20 points too. And everyone was like, what? Like what? Like how? Like because people in chat were like, oh, Alex has lost. It's like rest in peace, Canadian. And then it ends up you winning. So were you aware that like that was people's like perception of that game? And second, like tell me about that game. Like you obviously it didn't look great for you from like the camera, but like how did that game go? And how did you end up pulling that game out?
I definitely imagine it looking really bad, but I think it always is going to against Crusher Stampede because you're just like, oh, until the monsters go down, it doesn't really look like their army is getting smaller, and you can like see mine dwindle as like models go off. I went first, and my first turn was horrendous. Like I shot the Hive Guard into his Hive Guard because I had redeploy and he didn't, so I was like, okay, I'll just shift my Hive Guard over because I'm going first, and I'll shoot yours. And my 6 Hive Guard hitting on BS2 killed one of his Hive Guard.
Ouch.
I was like, oh shit. And then I failed all of my spells turn 1. And that was with 2 rerolls. You've got the Familiar for Gene Stealer Cult that just gives you a free reroll.
Yeah.
And then I spent a CP on the other one, and I still failed every single spell. And I was like, all right, let's see what happens. And then that turned into one of these scrappiest games. I had like 2-man Gene Stealer units running off to objectives and stuff. I played my ass off to win that game. And David played really well too. Like, he didn't give me anything.
Yeah.
It was just this like scrappy back and forth. But yeah, I had like tiny little 4-man units running around stealing objectives. Keller Morph like landing, shooting, stealing an objective. That game was wild.
Yeah.
Also, I think another issue that they did is they were asking us to keep track of the scores
Yeah.
digitally. I don't have time for that shit, guys. Like, if we have a table boss, give them the iPad and they can come over and ask, and I can tell them. Like 45 minutes into the game, I think David had been keeping up on his score, and I hadn't. Because he's got to move 6 models around. I have to move like 110. Like, of course he has less to do. I didn't have time to update the score. So yeah, I'm sure David and Peter were looking at the score, or Adam and Peter were looking at the score, being like, "Oh shit, Alex is down 30." Like, well, no, I just haven't entered any.
I think that was also a big part of it too, and that was one of the like points I think Val had brought up after the whole event was like a big problem that they had was like you're on a clock, you're playing in a high pressure situation game, and they expect you to like be super on top of your scores, but it's like at what point are you supposed to, especially if you're focusing on a game, and this has been my experience, like I don't mind doing by pencil and paper, I can do it so quick. When I have to get into an iPad and click this and they click that and the blah 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 blah, like it takes time. Like not a zero amount of time, not an insignificant amount of time, especially when you have a big model army or you're trying to use your time wisely. Like, you don't want to be spending 3-4 minutes, especially if it means your opponent has to wait to do stuff or it cuts in your time. Like, that's a huge amount of time, right? And I don't think people realize, like, in those situations, the last thing you want to be doing is like fiddling around with an iPad. And that was a big issue that Val brought up was like, yeah, some of the games, even though they knew that like what was happening on the table didn't reflect the score, and so Adam and Pete as well, not really knowing what was happening in the game, kind of lost track of things. And again, just like your game, they were like, okay, this person's winning, this person's losing, whatever.
Yeah, because all they can do is just like get some amount of information from the table boss, and I don't think either me or David were speaking loudly enough that they could like hear what we were saying, because they were right beside us. They were only like 10 feet away. But especially on the Sunday when there was still games going on, they can't hear us. So they're just
going into the semifinals, and this is the point, and this is just my opinion, and so you can refute it here. This was the point, and I think you ended up losing that game on the not realizing that a sticky objectives. I said to myself, I'm like, that's from Alex not having played enough events. I said, if Alex had gotten probably like, if he had played way more events this year, like all things being equal, if Alex had just played like 2 or 3 more events and had just that kind of practice where he's like used to that scenario, he's played that scenario a lot in different tournaments, he doesn't make that mistake. But I think, and this is just, I could be wrong, so I'm here curious case, but I'm like, this is a direct result of like us being in Canada and not being able to really do anything all year and play events. And that's like the difference that like, even though like your skill level is high, that like small detail, I think is something that you don't forget, or you don't, if you've played like as many events as some of these other guys have played. What are your thoughts on that? Like, what was that like? Yeah, did you remember that at all, or like where do you see that game going?
I think that's actually not something I had thought about, just like a lack of reps on that specific mission. I think more so than that was just fatigue. That's where I hit my wall. My game 7 was such a like scrappy, insane game, because that was a 73 to 7 or 75 to 71. Like, that was a 4-point game. That was like a final raw.
That was the one with the Crusher Stampede, right?
Yeah. And like, I hadn't slept well the night before, because you can't come down from that.
No.
Like, I just played 7 games.
You destroyed the evil villain from Britain, and now I'm like, you gotta sleep?
I don't think I fell asleep until like 2 o'clock.
Right.
So I've got no sleep. I did not have a good breakfast, and I had this insanely technical and like demanding game 7, and I just hit the wall. I think this is almost more of like, and nothing to take away from anyone playing like more elite armies, but that's where you see finally like 7 or 8 games have been played, and the guy playing 30 models and the guy playing 110, it starts to show of like, okay, the guy playing the 110 model army is just starting to get fatigue from, I've got to worry about my ranges in command, movement, psychic, shooting, combat. Like, there's just so much going on with that list. It's a super technical list. And I literally got to turn 3 and like looked down, and I almost like came out of a haze. I was like, oh, I'm playing like shit. I'm in trouble. Like this is not good. I got to dig my way out of this. And then it was the very next turn where I missed the sticky objectives. And I was like, oh, that's probably the nail in the coffin. I don't think I can claw it back now because I put them there to charge. And then in my head, I went, oh, I can easily kill this with the Hive Guard. Like I can overkill this with the Hive Guard, and the Hive Guard don't really have another shot. I could fail the charge. Let's do the sure thing. It was the right play. I will make sure that I take him off the objective because a charge could fail.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was like, oh, I still own that because it's sticky objectives. And I went, oh shit, okay, that's a huge problem.
Yeah.
And I made a bunch of other,
I guess in a sense, like
bad mistakes.
I guess in a sense my point does stand, which is, yeah, maybe you weren't like and this is kind of, you know, I've been in that situation. That Plague Bear list was not that I was playing in 2019 was not that was not like a like everything 2 inches, like there's so much going on there. And it played in every phase of the game basically. And what I will say though is like, even, and this is something that I noticed, like the first event back, like when I played at Las Vegas Team Tournament, I hadn't played like an event in like almost a year, maybe longer, right? Like I'd played like a 1-day RTT basically out with you guys, and like I played 3 games max in 1 day was like the most I'd played in like since basically 2019 season, right? But one thing that I did notice is like even on my 3rd game that first day, even though we were playing like basically Garage Hammer, I was exhausted. Like the lack of events rep isn't just a matter of like practice. It's also like the endurance of playing. Like when you, and I remember in 2019 playing a lot of events. By like day 2, I was usually pretty good still because I just been you're used to playing a lot of games, focusing, and some stuff starts to become autopilot. But especially with a list like yours, which requires so much brain power, it's definitely like you find that you definitely start to like get tired. And especially if you haven't been doing that all year, like if you had been playing an event every month, right, for the whole season, you probably would have been a lot more like used to that, right? Your body's used to that than say these guys that are playing, you know, 20 plus events in a year. Like, so definitely, I mean, it feels like in the end, you know, although like the lack of that's a direct result. And I guess what my point is, and this is kind of, I think if you could have gotten past that game, I think you could have beat Richard. I think you had the list to do it. Now, obviously, Richard's like the fact that he won with Admech, and like it seems like every game he played was so easy. Like I watched his games, it's so chill. Like he just knows what's happening and knows that he's winning, and there's no like, it never felt at any point where he was like in a position where things were looking bad. You know, like you have those moments where like you're like, oh crap, like I gotta outplay, or I gotta like get out of this hole. He was never in positions where he was like on the back foot. He was always like kind of controlling the game, and that says a lot about Richard. And you know, I've obviously played him, and I know you've probably played him before, and he's just like a machine, right? There's a reason they call him the machine. So huge congratulations to him, and huge congratulations to you as well for that finish. I think so what's next for you this year? Like obviously Tyranid book's coming out. We're still kind of in lockdown hell in Canada, so I don't even know like what, like I was thinking about it. I was like, okay, like I'm working on Eldar now, like maybe in like 2 or 3 months I'll be ready to go on an event. And I'm like, okay, well, like what isn't canceled? Like what is it going to be able to, for me to be able to go to right now? So what does the rest of your season look like this year? Do you think you're going to try to compete again at that level, try to get back into like the LVO and try to go high, or do you feel like you're going to take a little bit of a step back?
I mean, I'm always going to try and go to LVO. It is great. It's, you know, it's just the spectacle of it, of being this massive event. And I've kind of finally found, I think on this 4th run through, I finally found out what I really care about in Vegas. Because as far as I'm concerned, as far as I'm concerned, Vegas is a shithole town and shouldn't exist. It's an affront to God. Even just walking around the strip, I'm like, ugh, this place is terrible. But even though it's overpriced, the food in Vegas is the tits.
It's really good.
I will always go back to Vegas for the food. Just like that was the highlight, other than the event, was just like going to restaurants. My wife recommended one to me, and it was like incredible. Like the appetizer they had was one of the top 10 things I've ever eaten in my life.
Where did you guys, any recommendations? Any place you remember?
Went to Gordon Ramsay's.
Nice.
And
was that steak, or is it just called Gordon Ramsay's?
It's the burger place.
Okay.
But it's really good. And then Momofuku is an Asian fusion restaurant down there, and it was unreal.
I've been to the one in New York, David Chang's restaurant. Really good.
Yeah, it was super good.
They're supposed to open one in Vancouver in the Vancouver House, that big tall building.
I would be so
And
excited.
I think it got canceled because of just like COVID. Like they
Oh,
like signed a
man,
lease and stuff. So unfortunately, we're not going to get one here. But
that sucks.
sorry, do you think you're going to continue with the Tyranids for the rest of the season? Any other armies like tickling your fancy
No,
or
I mean, I might mess around with some other stuff.
yeah?
Now that Sisters took a big nerf, maybe I'll take them to a tournament and show people what's what. Uh, Although I don't even have a full army, I've got like 1,000 points painted. But yeah, it'll be Tyranids. I'm super excited about the new book. There's the Canhammer Team Tournament. That's a possibility as well. I've
I
been
think they
invited
already
out by
started selling
friends.
tickets and teams. Do you have a team? Because I'm pretty sure they've sold out the
Yeah,
whole.
I'm on Team B or Team A, of like one half of Team Canada.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, you got the WTC this year.
I did.
That is big. That's so.
Yeah,
Alex is the lone West Coaster on the WTC team, which is exciting. Finally, the West Coast gets some recognition after years of like East Coast dominance. So I assume you're going to be playing Tyranid / Force of the Hybrid there.
yeah, me and Justin are probably gonna split it. Probably do GSC. I'll probably do
Oh,
Tyranids.
you're not supposed to say that. Chris Haynes will come after me for spreading team composition like filth to the other teams. Although maybe you're just lying to me to throw the other teams off. So
That's right.
so have you never, obviously this is your first year competing in the WTC. What are you most excited about going over to Europe? Because that seems it's in,
I'm just gonna
where is
try
it
and
this
take your
year?
experience. Belgium.
Belgium. So that's nice. It's not in like a country about to
Siberia.
get invaded by like the USSR or like close to one at least. You're not going to be going to a war zone. So Belgium is beautiful. Have you ever been to Belgium?
I've never been to Europe. That
Right.
will
Are
be
you going to try to go a little bit earlier, stay a little bit longer to check out the sights and sounds, or
We'll see how much overtime I can work. Put some money away and see if
yeah,
we can get the wife to come too.
nice.
Make a full vacation out of it.
And what kind of prep are obviously you can't be playing a ton of practice games with those guys out in the East, but like what kind of prep are you going to be doing in the next like 6 months to kind of get ready? When is it? It's in August like 3rd or 4th?
Late July.
Okay.
Late July. I mean, I'm going to be
August is
playing.
basically late July. The really late July.
Excellent hosting.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be a lot of TTS practice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what it is. We're going to use the tools we have to make it work.
You mentioned earlier that you'd played some TTS, but like, what are your, I guess, thoughts on TTS as a whole? Like, do you feel like it's been obviously it's a useful tool, but like, do you feel like, I don't know, personally, I've always been like, it's just a matter of time before GW comes and like, lays down the Sue hammer
Yeah, we'll
and
see
comes
what
after all the
there.
like files and stuff. But it's yeah, I've never been a huge fan, but
I mean, the dice roller is garbage. It drives me nuts. It is just a useful tool to test armies. Like, you can play games, it works out pretty well. It does take away some of the, like, you have a weird scale of being able to like just zoom way out of the map and just take like that big global picture and see like what's going on. And there's stuff that you'll find in TTS that you might miss in real life because you had to walk around the table and you missed that kind of thing. And again, as you zoom in or zoom out, the scale changes. So sometimes you'll see people have like really bad coherency because you're like, no, that's 2 inches. But then you zoom in, you're like, oh, it was like 3 inches apart. But again, just general mechanics, learning rules, getting games in when there's sometimes no other chance to get a game in. I'll take it for what it is.
I was talking to I think it was Tom last week, but I think the biggest benefit, and this is like something that's really exciting about the WTC this year, and something that has traditionally I think worked against Canada and the US in the years past, which is like everyone's playing the same missions. Like in the past, you'd have the North American players playing ITC 70% of the year, and then the coaches forcing them to play these WTC games, which was a mix of like Maelstrom and like book missions, like just this huge like this the stepchild of this combination of these two. And now it's like all across the spectrum, whether it's in Europe, North America, or the WTC, they're playing the same missions, and especially at a lot of the big events. And I think that's something that's actually going to really help you guys, especially because I remember the year that we were supposed to go to the WTC, like in 2019. Chris was yelling at me to play WTC missions. All I played was ITC missions because that's what I was competing in, and I didn't really have an interest in playing WTC missions. Thankfully, we never ended up going, so I didn't have to ever show anyone how bad I was at them. But I definitely is something that I feel like is going to be beneficial for you guys. Any any like goals, I guess, for yourself and or for the team going into the season or into the event?
Um, I mean, as far as Team Canada is concerned, I'm sure the goal is do better than any previous year. We want to rank higher. I would love to make like a top five. Um, I think that is a possibility as well. Uh, Personally, like in the ITC, I mean, it's so dependent on what I can actually get out to. I I think even with like coming fourth at LVO, I was still out of the top 100 on the year.
Yeah.
Which 2020 season, I was like casually into the top 50 with, again, still only going to like 8 events, but like
Yeah.
real events, Attack X and Wet Coast and stuff. This year, we'll see what I can hit. If I can go to any like big majors or anything like that, just perform well there. I have all the tools now. Nick made this joke a long time ago. I remember watching something on Art of War, and he was like, "Yeah, it'd be really exciting to see what Alex can do if he ever gets a real army." Because Tyranids and GSC were always like so mediocre. Like
Mhm.
GSC had like 4 weeks of being killer, and then GW was like, no, 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 none of that. Put him into the ground. Yeah, this is what happens when I have like a real army to play.
That's nice. All right. Any final thoughts, Alex?
Nah, I think that's good.
Cool. All right.
Check us out on
Well,
Art of
we have
War
been
and all that
chatting with
stuff.
Alex MacDougall, the Canadian hero, Tyranid Overlord, and WTC team member. I'm sure I'll check back in with you closer to the event. Obviously, we will watch your progress very closely this year, and hopefully we get to throw down again at an event this year. I mean, I haven't. I'm semi-retired this year. No chaos. I don't think my Eldar will be done probably till the summer at least, given my painting speed and like the models, if I can ever, I don't know, everything. Night Spinners are already sold out. Half the range is already sold out on GW. Like everything's already sold out. Like I said to myself I wasn't going to have a pile of shame for the Eldar, but then I realized I'm like, if I don't buy everything now, it's all gonna be sold out for 6 months. So I was like panic buying, like, and I'm like, GW, what have you done to me? It's like you forcing me to panic buy stuff because I know it's all gonna be sold out. Sure enough, like literally, I ordered 2 Night Spinners and Wave Serpent. The next like an hour later, they're sold out. And then they were back in stock and then sold out again within like 24 hours. I was like, oh god, what is happening here? So
Everything's in stock for Tyranids except Hiveguard.
I mean, for now,
Yeah.
yeah. All right, man. Well, thanks for chatting with me, and everyone else, thanks for tuning in. And we'll be back tomorrow. Actually, I don't think we'll be back tomorrow because I'm going to get a manicure at 3 o'clock, so I will not be back tomorrow. And drinks. But we will be back on Tuesday with some hobby and chat. Thanks everyone for tuning in.